Member for Public Works Committee. I'll introduce people in the building. Scott?
Scott Kellogg sitting in for Tom Rayom.
And then on Zoom, we have Joe Terry, Joe Eichstead. Jake, can you hear?
Yep.
Jake Catnaugh. And that's it. So call the meeting to order. We review the DPW report. Joe?
Thanks. The DPW report is currently online on the city's website and the Public Works homepage. A couple highlights at the airport. The winter equipment's been prepared for seasonal activity, and the management contract has been approved both by the Airport Commission and City Council. That's the contract where the city's providing airport administrative services. For our engineering group, it's been a number of studies that are either in traffic studies that are either in progress or complete. As an example, there was a speed study request on 10th Avenue North for people speeding and not obeying stop and yield signs. That data has been collected, reviewed, and the results indicate that the speeds are typical of speeds on a local street. In the report, there's a full list of signal complaint issues and the current status of all those. So it's a fairly extensive list, so if you're interested, take a look at that. The design work for our 2021 projects continues. Progress is being made, and we're getting close to being complete with several of the plan sets. Our 11th Street project from Washington to Apricot, design is at 90%. 15th Street from Apricot to Norton, design is currently at 70%. Jefferson, design is at 75%, and we're working on, those RFPs are complete now. I think they just went out for real estate purchases. It was just approved by council. And the West Jackson Street design work is well underway, and as that progresses, engineering staff's been forwarding that information to the elected officials for review and comment if there's any questions on that. In the streets group, our construction projects are all complete. All of our 2020 construction projects are complete. That's the first time in a couple of years we've been able to do that and add on the leftover from 2019. It was quite a season and impressive work by our staff. You can look at the maintenance work that was done this month. A lot of miscellaneous maintenance work with the weather still somewhat cooperating. We were even able to get out and do some end of season line painting work that normally we wouldn't be able to do this time of the year. At the wastewater plant, construction's begun on that Class A biosolids storage addition, and that has been paved, and some of the site restoration is done. We're also working with the wastewater department. We have had a number of requests, and we generally get requests for tours of the plant, and with COVID, that's just not practical right now. We've talked about it, and we're currently working with community media to do a virtual tour. We're pretty excited about that and getting that on the city's website just to highlight the extensive operation at the plant and give people an opportunity to see how wastewater is treated in the city is I think going to be a great thing, a great addition here. Some other odds and ends. I have met, along with the mayor, finance director, and public works superintendent with Enterprise Fleet to discuss some possible options to look at our vehicle fleet a little bit differently, especially pickups up to 1 tons, things like that, and potentially leasing vehicles. On the surface, it looks like the city can maintain a newer fleet for significantly lower cost, but those financial details are still being investigated, and we'll have information to provide prior to staff making any kind of a recommendation. That'll end up going to the Finance and Property Committee for review when we're ready there. We have had some communications with CN Railroad. They've thrown up a few roadblocks for the city's desire to allow rail car storage on the city's tracks in the East Side Business Park. And as staff, we've reviewed the contracts, and we have some concerns about some of the questions that they're raising. We're trying to make sure that they're legitimate concerns because they also have rail space that they'd like to lease. We want to make sure that it's not an effort just to try to convince customers to use their tracks first. Also, you should have received a copy, but the request for proposals for the transportation utility study and financial review went out this week. We have had some questions asked by the two service providers that I've submitted those to. I'm only aware of 2 service providers that may have the capacity to do this. I've also attended a webinar this last month on it, and in fact, because of the work that the city has done and lack of these utilities statewide at the current time, I've been asked to sit on a panel discussion with the League of Municipalities in an effort to potentially develop some best practices for some uniform utility structure statewide. So we're excited about that, and we're excited about the staff being on the forefront of this and looking at some options. Like I say, the report is pretty extensive, but the rest of it's online. So please take a few minutes to review it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss a few of these at the meeting.
Joe, where are those? You said that you know of 2 that have the capacity. Are they? How far away are they? Statewide, within the state, or local, or?
They're in the state. One is R.A. Smith, and the other is Rupert Milkey. I believe both of those would end up partnering with a financial firm, and I would suspect that that'll be Ehlers and Associates, which would be great because that's who the city currently uses for a lot of its financial work, such as loans and things like that. They're certainly, if that's the team, either one of those with Ehlers is a team would, I think, be good. So we'll see what we get for proposals, and we'll review them and have a recommendation to bring forward at the January Public Works meeting.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Any other questions? Item 3 on the agenda is review and consider modifying traffic control at 2 Mile Avenue and 16th Street to an always stop. One of the Joes?
Yeah, I'll run through this. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. Great. So this particular intersection has been of some concern from a variety of at least 2 or 3 different complaints, one of which I think came from the police department to take a closer look at. It dates back well over a year with the original complaint being raised, but we have gone through, done a thorough investigation, pulled together a bunch of traffic counts, accident history, and took a detailed look at the existing conditions, any vision obstructions that are out there. Everything that we've looked at is included in the packet. And a long story short, there's stop control currently on 16th Street, which is a bit of an anomaly for 16th Street. A lot of traffic, generally the major route, based on our traffic counts, there's almost 2,000 vehicles on an average day that run 16th Street. Contrary to that, on 2 Mile Avenue, there's only about a quarter of that, about 500 vehicles a day. So for traffic on 16th Street to pull up and have to stop for a minor street, I guess, so to speak, it's a bit confusing, especially considering that at 16th Street and Airport, which is a quarter mile to the north of this intersection, it's almost an identical intersection, but there's an always stop at that location. So given the accident history, that's all identified in the report. There's a history of right angle accidents and side swipes, which is an indication of improper traffic control, that the vehicles just aren't anticipating 2 Mile Avenue to continue through without having to stop. The recommendation at this point is to install an all-way stop control at this location for three primary reasons. One, there's an expectation that this intersection should be an all-way stop due to the one similar intersection just north of here at 16th and Airport. Number two, 16th Street is an arterial street intersecting with a collector street, so they're both higher classification roadways. And then in addition, right angle accidents are definitely an indicator that the existing traffic control isn't meeting expectations. So with that, that's our recommendation, is an always stop. Other options or another option that's less preferred is to switch stop control from 16th Street to 2 Mile Avenue. The reason that that's not the recommended option at this point is largely due to the ability or the confidence that we have for traffic to make that switch without confusion and without increased accidents, as well as the adjacent intersection at Airport Avenue that's almost identical. Lastly, there's the do nothing option and leave it as is, but it certainly seems that it would warrant some changes, and the recommended approach is an always stop.
That seems to make sense to me, Joe, especially based on the fact that, what'd you say, 2,000 cars per day on 16th as opposed to how many per day? I'm sorry.
Almost 2,000 a day on 16th Street and about 500 a day on 2 Mile Avenue.
Based on that, is there any other discussion?
Joe, this is Scott. I was just curious, when you make a change like this, do you put like underneath the sign all-way stop, or just so people now they know the change or not? I was just curious.
Yeah, so the standard sign, we'll have the stop sign with an all-way plaque underneath that.
Okay.
But then because it's a new sign on 2 Mile Avenue, and even for traffic on 16th Street to understand that things are changing, we'll likely flag the signs. Put some flags up on them, as well as advanced warning signs temporarily, so that vehicles can get used to the change and hopefully avoid any accidents there.
That's good.
That being said, I'll move to accept the recommendation of making 2 Mile Avenue and 16th Street an always stop. Do I have a second?
I'll second, and I'd like to comment when available, please.
Go ahead, Jake. You're up.
Thank you, sir. I go down this street every day to take my son to daycare. People fly through down 2 Mile. I think this is an appropriate action. I think the warning signs are even more important to get people used to it. because even on airports still, there's people just flying up, doing rolling stops at those signs. So I think this is definitely appropriate. I second this, and I'm fully in favor of this. I think it's for the safety of the citizens. It's just maybe over the years it wasn't as busy, but it's definitely gotten busier over time, and it's necessary at this point.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. 3 ayes and no nays. Motion passes. Goes to item number 4, which is parking changes at the following locations: Saratoga Street between East Jackson and 5th Street North, Dewey Street between 6th Street South and 8th Street South, Dewey Street between 5th Street South and Lincoln Street, and Lee Street between 6th Street South and 8th Street South. You have the floor, guys.
So the list of proposed parking changes are largely identified just in kind of routine review of different areas, trying to update our signs and keep track of things. These were selected because they appear to be out of date, that they were put in place years ago based upon adjacent land use and parking conditions that existed at some time in the past. And those conditions no longer seem to warrant these parking restrictions today. And so I'll go through each one of them and identify what the current restriction is and what the proposed change would be, and what we're recommending. And in the packet, there's images showing, if you have it in color especially, it'll be helpful to see, but showing the current and proposed state of each of those. So the first one being Saratoga Street, from East Jackson Street to 5th Street North, that is currently a 1-hour parking on both sides from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. except Sundays and holidays. And the proposed change there is to remove that 1-hour parking restriction completely. That seems to be largely to have been in place for the nursery flower shop that used to be there. And since that's no longer there, we're not certain that that parking restriction is needed anymore. Moving on to, is there any questions on that one before we move on?
Nope, not Peter.
Okay. Next one is Dewey Street from 6th Street South to 8th Street South. The current parking restriction is a 2-hour parking both sides starting 50 feet west of 8th Street South, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The proposed parking restriction or the proposed situation is to remove the temporary parking restriction through that stretch. There's a portion of no parking immediately west of 8th Street that would remain in place, but the parking restriction by day and time would be proposed to be removed. Dewey Street from Lincoln Street to 5th Street South. There is a 2-hour parking on the north side from 80 feet west of 5th Street South to 5th Street South. The reason for this particular parking restriction is unknown, and it doesn't appear that it's something that is still warranted today. So the proposed change would be to remove that 2-hour parking restriction. And then finally, Lee Street from 6th Street South to 8th Street South. There's a 2-hour parking restriction on the north side for the entire stretch, and then a 2-hour parking on the south side from 6th Street South to where 7th Street South extended would be, And then there's a no parking restriction from 7th Street South extended to 8th Street. That's the red portion. And the proposed change would be to remove the day and time parking restriction completely, and then to shorten up and modify the red no parking area to both sides of the street, but just up to the west limits of the, I believe that's the Burger King parking lot property. Again, these are kind of legacy parking restrictions that don't appear to be warranted anymore. In fact, a few of these items were brought to the Public Works Committee back in 2016 and were discussed at that time, but no decision was made. So the options available: you can remove the limited time parking restrictions listed above, adjust the no parking area identified on Lee Street, or of course we could keep the parking restrictions in place. But those are the recommendations. If there's any questions, I can certainly field those.
Yeah, I have a concern, if I may speak. Just being so close to Whitterfield, I don't want that to turn into a neighborhood that's getting a bunch of cars parked on it because we lift the restrictions. So, I mean, is this going to be different than Witter Street, for example, or are we enforcing the same rules we would on the streets around Whitterfield during the Raptor games and other activities?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure that we see those sorts of parking issues this far south. Of course, it could be the case, but I'm not aware that that's an issue.
The feedback that we get from the residents there is just wondering why those restrictions are in place, because there really, except for them, there really isn't a lot of demand for parking on that particular block. And again, given this location compared to the ball field, I don't think that's going to be an issue. We did bring this up a few years ago, and there was some concern then, and it didn't get passed. We had the same recommendation then, and I guess it's easy enough. I think, given the lack of traffic even on 6th Street South parking, that we're just not going to see a problem there. And of course, if we do, we can come back with a new recommendation. But I think given the situation, it's certainly staff's recommendation to alter this one.
Thank you.
Any further discussion, Scott?
No.
Do I have a motion to accept the recommendations on the slate of all four?
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendations on these particular streets.
Second. Any further discussion? We have a motion and second to approve the slate, or the recommendations for that slate. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, ayes have it, 3-0. Moving forward to item 5, which is preliminary resolution on Freeman Street between 14th Avenue North and 13th Avenue North. Proposed 2022 construction. Okay.
So Fremont Street, 14th Avenue to 13th Avenue, it's a one block reconstruction project. Like you said, proposed in 2022 construction season. It impacts 5 properties, and it would cover, preliminary resolution would cover permanent street surfacing, concrete sidewalk, concrete driveway approach, curb and gutter, and sanitary and water services.
Any further discussion on that?
My only question would be, is there will be a forum where residents can come and ask questions or attend a meeting? I know several people live over there.
Yeah, so following the preliminary resolution, what we would normally do is we would send out a notice to all the affected property owners, letting them know of the city's intentions. We'd send them the adopted preliminary resolution, and then we'd also provide them with an estimated cost of special assessments. That's the initial notice. Subsequent to that, we were in contact with the property owners regarding any issues that they have. Usually some of them reach out to us right away and discuss things. Otherwise, we'll hold an open house or meeting of that sort to discuss any further questions after we have a preliminary plan set developed and prior to construction. And then we'll hold a on-site meeting prior to construction, immediately prior to construction, with all the property owners. We'll walk the project with them. And
as far as the property owners, does that include the church and the school that are on Fremont?
14th to 13th, I think, is further west of there. 7th to 10th, that project would abut the church anyway. The school would be beyond that. Let me just double check though. Yeah, so 13th to 14th, that's all residential. 7th to 10th, it does right at 10th Avenue. That the church, St. Lawrence Church, abuts the street right at 10th Avenue.
That would be my only concern. Is just that I think they need to be informed about this, and I know if a lot of people attend there, and the school's right there, so just make sure that they're not getting a giant tax bill or a assessment that they're not expecting. That's my only concern. But otherwise, I mean, it needs to be done. But yeah, that's my only concern. Is just that we really involve them and the people who not only live over there, but also that attend church and school over there.
Okay.
Any other questions? Want to take these one at a time? Do you want to take these one at a time, or should we just make a motion to move all three forward to council, so at least something's on the table? Can we do that? 5, 6, and 7?
Yep. I'll make a motion to approve item 5, 6, and 7 for the repairs and the preliminary resolutions on Fremont Street.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve 5, 6, and 7 on our agenda, which is preliminary resolutions for repairs on Freeman Street in a couple different areas. All in favor, say aye.
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 No opposition, the ayes have it. Motion passes. And finally, we have review the 1 Mile Creek project scope. Mr. Terry?
So last month, we brought forward a recommendation to consider performing work on the lower portion of the 1 mile. There was some discussion and a motion to send it back to committee for further consideration. As indicated in the referral, In October, information was presented about the community meeting, staff recommendations, and options from neighboring residents related to the structure, dredging, and benefits on the 1 Mile Creek. Based on that, staff has continued to discuss options for moving forward and has the following comments and recommendations. As mentioned at the November Public Works Committee meeting, this project has always been desired to be a win-win project for the city and adjacent property owners. However, given the additional detail from the preliminary study, there's a clearer picture of what is actually beneficial to the city as a whole, and that differs from the adjacent property owners' expectations, especially owners on the upper pond. It would seem that all parties still desire a win-win project, but to get there, some compromises would need to be made. The committee and council could consider expanding the dredging project from only utilizing the lower pond to also including the upper pond. The property owners along the upper pond would need to consider allowing the removal of the upper dam, and this would be the compromise that could still create a win-win project. The city achieves the treatment credits of the impoundments without significant additional expense, and the property owners of the upper pond will be ensured that they will have a pool of water, albeit slightly smaller than what they have historically enjoyed. The options that we're suggesting are available is to repair the lower dam and the lower pond. That's what was recommended last month for $233,000. The other item is to repair the lower dam, remove the upper dam, and then dredge both reservoirs. That cost would be about $307,000. And staff recommends that any further discussion about the upper pond should be done with some understanding. And that is that staff does not believe the DNR would issue a permit to reconstruct that upper pond dam. The benefits of the dam and dredging of the upper pond are limited to the adjacent property owners and not the city as a whole. Staff believes it may not be appropriate for the city to facilitate the dredging on private property when there is little to no overall city benefit. An alternative for the upper pond property owners is to privately dredge and maintain the upper dam. That's unlikely because permitting and coordinating private dredging efforts could be difficult and cost prohibitive. They'd still need to get a DNR permit for that. And if the upper pond is to be dredged as a standalone project, consistent with other dredging projects, the cost to dredge that upper pond should be assessed to the property owners that directly benefit from the activity. So staff's recommendation is either options 1 or 2, to repair the lower dam and dredge the lower pond, or to repair the lower dam, remove the upper dam, and dredge everything as one impoundment. We have funds budgeted for option 1. If option 2 were desired, that balance would either need to be specially assessed or a budget amendment performed to facilitate that extra work.
What would the special assessments be for the upper?
So the special assessments are costs that are assessed to property owners for public works work that directly benefits them.
Do you know how much they would be approximately, do you think? Estimate?
Well, we'd have to evaluate and see how probably calculate that based on shoreline.
I was just curious.
It'd be about 74,000. If it was equally divided by 5, you're looking at about $14,000 per property owner if it were to be assessed.
All right.
And that's based on the city's preliminary estimates. You know, we do tend to try to be a little cautious when we're making these budget estimates because we don't want to get halfway through a project and be completely out of money. So it depends on how the dredging work goes. We've looked at it and feel that some of the estimates that we received from our consulting engineer for the removal of the upper dam is maybe a little excessive. And again, depending on the staging of the project and the preparation, you know, our staff did a tremendous job on the Quintal Creek project. So it could come in less than that if everything goes really well.
Yeah, if I could add something to that too. On that topic, yes, so the cost estimates were provided by the consulting engineer, and there are some reservations on that difference, and largely the difference is made up from the cost to remove the upper dam, which isn't 100% intuitive to us, and there's some questions that we have there. But those were the numbers that were provided by them, and so you know, they were presented and published in written form. So we left them as such for now. But as a comparison, if the costs are for dredging alone are comparable to the Quintal Creek project, granted it was a different area and different number of property owners, but most property owners were under $1,000 for dredging alone.
And how many were, when you say most property owners, now we're only talking about 5 property owners though. How many were there in that case?
I'm not sure the exact count. I believe there were over a dozen, maybe a few more than that even.
That's still, but, still quite a bit substantial savings.
Yeah.
Jake, do you have anything on? Any questions?
No questions. I mean, my only comment would be I think we just keep this on the referral list. I understand their concerns, but at this time, considering the budget, considering the uncertainty on what we're going to have available and where we're going to be putting our funds, I just can't commit to dredging the creek right now. I know their concerns, but I can't commit to it, and I think it's definitely something that needs to be done eventually, but it's not something that I would like to propose right now. So I'd like to make a motion to keep it on the referral list, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a motion to keep it on the referral list.
Before we go further on that, Joe, what were you about to say?
Going to say if we are going to perform this work in 2021 as budgeted, we do need to have to take some steps to move this forward. There's a significant amount of work to do in permitting with the DNR, coordination, planning, evaluation of the repairs to the dam. You know, if there's more information that's needed, we'd be happy to provide that, but we do need to move forward with this project if we're going to be successful in getting anything done. So again, if there's additional information that's needed, please let us know. That's, you know, we're trying to provide additional information over this past month so that hopefully some decision can be made and some work can get started on the preliminary design and the permitting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern is just that we get into this and it costs more than what was projected. That's my worry here, and just going into next year with all the uncertainty of what's going to happen around here with the tax base. I just don't want to start something that we get into and then it costs more than we expected to, especially after all the projects we did last year. But if that's your recommendation, I'm willing to move forward with it. I always trust city staff, but I would like to just keep this on the referral list for a little longer and see what next year's going to look like. So I'll keep my motion to keep this on the referral list.
Well, do we need a motion for that?
Yep. Motion to keep the 1 Mile Creek project scope on the referral list.
Isn't that a no action type? Do we need a motion for something? We don't need a motion to take it off the referral list, right?
Well, I think if the desire is to wait, I think you would want to describe it as action, and in that way, Alderperson Catnaw's
Gotcha.
motion is very appropriate.
Okay. So we have a motion to leave this on the referral list. Any further discussion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to leave this on the referral list. And then, does that negate you investigating any further then, Joe?
Yeah, at this point, I don't think there's a whole lot more we can do
Okay.
without the council deciding it's a project.
Okay. Well, motion and second to leave this on the referral list. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carried, so this remains on the referral list. Number 9, speaking of the referral list, we're going to review the referral list. Let's see. Bear with me a second. We have the referral list in front of us. Looks like we still have a number of requests from Alderperson Rayom to discuss the future of 8th Street. That's been on there a while. Developing a street resurfacing program has been removed. Request to review a multi-year capital improvement plans is still on there. Just going through the list, I don't see anything. The beam guard has been removed. We could actually we could remove number 9, Joe. I think we've taken care of that with we can remove number 9, my request to review the 18th Avenue project design and assessments. It's been done. And then the newest one would be request by Alderperson Bemke for the city to donate utilities services for the proposed Wisconsin Rapids School District quadplex baseball and softball facility. And we have that. That was done on the 17th. Consider request by Wisconsin Rapids School District for the city to provide and donate utilities to the proposed quadplex. Background information has been being made to further conversation based on the 11/17 council meeting. So that's the referral list. Anything you add to it that we know of? Other than that, that was the final item. So the next item on the agenda is to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second? All in
I'll
favor?
second.
All in favor? say
Aye, and thank you to Mr. Veneman and Mr. Kellogg tonight for sitting in and the rest of the city staff.
No problem. Have a good night.
Good night.